Sober on Purpose is the podcast that takes you beyond clean to fulfilling your dreams. Other programs get you sober. We ask what's next. Come thrive with us.
Today on Sober on Purpose, we are missing Jerry, who I love doing this with, but he is traveling right now. We have Jane Macky of We the Village. And this is the second episode for craft training, community reinforcement training. And that is about helping your loved one get sober. And Jane actually designed, with her digital marketing background, she designed a digital version of it, which I use in my classes, which we use for our homework, and that you can use outside of a government program, right? You can just sign on and use this for anybody.
Yeah, you can sign up on our website, and we also actually are running a clinical trial right now, and we're offering it for free if you're eligible. So there are a couple different ways you can access it.
Awesome. Well, you started with eligible. Let's talk about who this is for. Who would come looking for you?
Yeah. So we see family members only. So it's people, when we say family members, I mean people who are concerned about a loved one's substance use or recovery, or they just want to be able to better support, learn skills to better support their loved one's recovery. Or a third sort of goal, like we have people coming in that might want to get their loved one into treatment. They might want to support their loved one's long-term recovery, or helping them stay in treatment, stay in recovery for the long term. Or maybe somebody that just wants to feel better themselves. They're so exhausted by what they've gone through so far and trying to sort of navigate a loved one's addiction, that those are the kind of people that we typically see. We mostly, I would say, see parents and partners. That typically ends up being the person that's like really motivated to try and help and like really make a change. And it makes sense because the way craft works is we work with somebody that has influence in the relationship, and typically parents and partners often have a lot of influence. We also see siblings, coworkers, friends, across the gamut.
If I decide to work with your program, or let's ask it this way, who is the typical person? What stage are they in with the partner, the child, or the friend who has the substance use disorder? Where is it normally?
So my goal would be that everyone would know about craft, everyone would know about We the Village, and that if you suspected that your loved one was having problems with substances, that you'd come right over to us right away, and we can give you the skills. It's a 12-week program, and our goal is really to teach you the skills, a new skill every week that you can take with you through the whole sort of recovery journey with this person. So that is my goal, but that is not what happens today, because not that many people know about craft, which is why I love, participating in a podcast like this, because I really want more people to know about craft. That's why I do what I do. It is so effective. But yeah, typically someone has been searching online, they've been frustrated, they've tried things, but they haven't found something that's worked. Maybe they've heard about it through a podcast like this, or through somebody that knows about it, read a book. But they're typically really feeling kind of stuck. They've tried a lot of things. Maybe they're not getting through to their loved one. Maybe their loved one is making some progress, but they're worried about how their recovery is going, and they just want to get answers and know what sort of role they could play alongside this person. Because when you're in a relationship with someone struggling with substance use or in recovery, we're a part of that journey.
And this doesn't require that you bring the person who's struggling.
No, we work with one person, typically one person from a family. And I get asked a lot, actually, like, do we need the whole family to come in? I think the intervention model, people are a little bit probably even more aware of, and that sort of this idea of bringing the whole family in. And we actually have wonderful success just working with one person from the family that's motivated to help. I think that's the key ingredient, is if it's causing someone in the family pain and they are really motivated to want to help this person, or try different things. And oftentimes people come in and they're really angry, and they feel fed up. They're like, I've tried everything, I'm doing all this work, my loved one's not doing work. And yet they're spending a lot of emotional energy even if they're sort of like not wanting to put more work in. And so what we would always say is like, you're already doing work, whether you like it or not. And we want to teach you the ways to do it that are effective and will get you the results that you want.
Can we back up just a minute? Intervention model versus craft model. And
Yeah.
most of us have seen some kind of TV show where people storm in and they kind of take everybody by surprise. Can you explain that more in terms of how you use it?
Yeah, so I think that's what I am referring to is getting the whole family together or getting everyone sort of concerned together, having a meeting. I think typically what those approaches are known for, and it's not the same in every intervention, but I think typically in the past interventions have been very confrontational. Um, if you don't go to treatment, we're going to cut ties with you, or something like that, some sort of big ultimatum. What craft seeks to do is redevelop connection. Often when we're loving someone in addiction, um, our connection and our communication can really break down. The person who created craft has written a book, How to Get Your Loved One Sober Without Fighting and Yelling. And we really aim to do that. So our goal is to rebuild connection. The more connected we are, the more we can have those tough conversations. We use behavioral strategies to reduce harmful substance use and increase positive behaviors, which creates more space for that person to, think and dream about a life of sobriety and why that might be valuable. And then we teach the skills to have an invitation to treatment type conversation, which is all about collaboration. It's much more of a, here's how I'm feeling, here's what I see, and what are you thinking? Here are options, like trying to get them engaged in the process. And I think it's also worth noting that craft has been studied in clinical trials against the intervention model and also against Al-Anon, Nar-Anon in terms of treatment entry rates, reduced substance use, and how the family feels like their health and well-being and functioning. And craft vastly outperforms or has outperformed interventions in these clinical trials. I think that, I have heard people have successful interventions, and I think sometimes it comes to that, or it could even be, a part of what might happen. But it certainly isn't the only way, or
You're
even the most effective necessarily.
Yeah. And you're choosing to develop this, and we'll get into some, because I really want our audience to see your work is so timely, that it's digital, that it's available that way, and it has the feel of a digital course that you would take online. It's not,
Mhm.
you don't have to walk into an Al-Anon room or an AA room to do this. Plus, it has the personal connection. Tell us a little bit more your personal connection and why this is so near and dear to you.
Yeah. I honestly was the type of person that used to think that addiction happened to down and out people. Maybe there was some reason why they were morally corrupt, a person that you see on the side of the street and you sort of walk by and think, God, like what happened to them? Um, it wasn't until I was in my first job in my career and working in Manhattan, very exciting space. We were developing some of the first mobile apps and iPad apps for big Fortune 500 companies, working really hard to wow them with the ways that we could connect their brands to their consumers online and through mobile. That my best friend and colleague at the time, someone that I truly admired, somebody that all the clients loved, bring him into a meeting and he could sell anything, began to spiral downwards. And the moment for me was when we were working late at night and you were going to be there for hours, and I'm thinking we should order dinner to keep us going, and he pulls out a line of coke at work. And it was at that moment that I sort of realized I don't know how to talk to him about it. I don't know what to do. I went online. And so here I am creating these amazing sort of innovations for these companies to sell more cheese. And when I go online to say, how do I help a friend struggling with cocaine? I see rehab, brochureware websites. Um, I couldn't even talk to him about it, let alone sort of tell him I thought he should go to rehab at that point. It took me sort of trying many different things. I went to Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, I went to therapy, and I still left those different spaces. Maybe like I got things out of them. I think, being in community is really helpful. Being able to talk about my own feelings and process that was helpful. But I never got to know what to do when I went to my friend. What do I do when I go home? What can I say to him? What can I do? And for me, and I think this is what resonates with a lot of people, and it's like it's a hug. This guy needs people to wrap around him. But I could see he was becoming more and more isolated. And it wasn't until I learned about craft that I started to say, this is exactly what I had been thinking was I needed to do. I just didn't have the confidence, and I didn't have the language. I didn't have the tools to know what to do. And so fast forward however many years, this man is now my husband, and I've really dedicated my career and a lot of my personal free time and just passion to bringing to people what I really believe is needed. And I think that craft has been really proven in clinical trials time and time again, and we've done our own with it with our online program, but it hasn't gotten into the market. And I think that's a problem that happens with a lot of innovations in research, that they don't have the sort of marketing or the, as you mentioned, like the technology or the approach that puts it in people's hands. It's one thing to read a book. It's another to be online where we all are now, be multi sort of media, videos, worksheets, quizzes, and then live sessions as well to actually learn the skills.
Absolutely. And your story is so apropos. I think I'm a little bit older than you, and probably 10 years prior to you, that's what I was doing in the middle of the night. Husband and I were separated, courts were involved, we had 2 young kids. I was trying all the traditional routes, therapy, Al-Anon, all those places. Still, it was not, there wasn't anything really connecting. And I'm still an Al-Anon member, still a Celebrate Recovery member. The model is different. I truly believe in the self-care. That's part of your model too. But having the language and understanding that a lot of this is about connection, when the other models are saying, no, set boundaries, shut them off, push them away. That's why I teach the class. That's really shifted it for me. Plus, the other thing that I find fascinating about your class, it's not that it cannot continue, but it is a 12-week building on itself module that has a beginning and an end, rather than and we did another interview with the Colorado craft facilitator, Jessica Triplett, and I'm like, I didn't walk in going, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life, totally labeled. This is going to be my life. And it's not that I don't love those communities. There's also a time and a place and some growth pieces in there. So when you've got Dr. Robert Myers doing his work, and Dr. Bob and Bill W. doing their work, I think it's a generational. It keeps building on itself rather than getting stuck. And I was so grateful for your work when we went into pandemic, isolation mode, because it was something to share with them that was fresh and new. Do you have something you could screen share with us or show us what it is?
Yeah, let me see if I can pull this off.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. Well, and the other thing I want is an app.
Well, so we chose web. You can use it on your mobile and on desktop. We know that there are barriers for distribution of apps, so that's where we're starting. That's where we're focused right now. But I'm excited to show this to you because we've actually just been working through an upgrade on a lot of our content. And so this is some of the first times that I'm showing this. Awesome. And we've just sort of redone a whole lot of our videos, but I'll walk you through it. So this is what you see when you log into our coursework. Mm-hmm. We've got 12 core modules. So we've got the foundational ones here, and I'll dive into one of them, but we've got the foundational ones here, our first 3 weeks. Here we're focusing on you and your role. Then we're getting into our core sort of strategies, positive communication, which underlies everything, looking at our behavior roadmap. Craft is fully focused on behavior, so we're setting that up there. We then have our 3 behavioral change techniques. So this is week 4, 5, 6. Positive reinforcement, reward, timeout, and natural consequences. Then we move into some of the meat and potatoes. So here it's all about our own ability to thrive and looking after ourselves, treatment invitations and treatment options. And we sort of separate those out because we want to focus on the communication aspect of making a treatment invitation, and then also focus on how we actually find good options. And people sometimes say, like, hey, my goal isn't treatment entry. My loved one's already in treatment, they're already in recovery. And again, to your point, what we're trying to do is we're like, here is a 12-week set of skills that you're going to use. We talk about a 5-year horizon in recovery, and sometimes it takes a lot longer to even get into that sort of working through that 5-year horizon. And so there may be different kinds of care that your loved one needs over time. So it's really, we're trying to arm with all the skills that you're going to need. And then we have our sort of last set of 3, which is sustaining recovery progress. We talk about relapse and recovery, relationship progress. Craft says that we can focus on the relationship now and progressing it. We can focus on the good things now. We don't have to stop everything when substance use is at play. And it's actually really important to also focus on the good. Yes. And then our finale. And then lastly, we just have some safety resources on typical things that may come up depending on who you're loving and how their recovery is going, but interpersonal violence and overdose precautions. But I'll just
awesome. I haven't.
Yeah,
you're right. I haven't
upgrade, right?
Yeah,
upgrade.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. So this is what a typical module looks like. You're gonna get a little intro. We have our videos here. I don't know if you can hear this, but
I don't think the sound is going to play, but the important part is, you're still the star. Yay. The important part is the short segments. This isn't sit down, because oftentimes when you're caring for someone who has a substance use disorder, you don't have a whole lot of time. So they're short segments, they're doable, and they're implementable immediately.
Yeah. So this first module is all about your role. We talk a bit about the role of worksheets. Homework is really important in craft. And when we talk about homework, what we mean is like just thinking about how to apply the skills to your life and your loved one. And so that's what we use worksheets a lot for. This is an example of, one of the worksheets, and you can see there are parts for our participants to fill in, but there are also examples here. So you can see an example of how somebody else has filled it in.
So if you're a very private person and you just want to do this on your own, this is available, and then you can reach out to a coach if you want.
And then a little knowledge quiz. So that's really the setup of every module. We try to aim, you could really go through it in like 15 to 20 minutes. And like you said, we offer this that you can purchase it to run through it on your own, self-guided, we call it, or you could join a group alongside the course. So that's meeting with a coach, craft certified coach weekly in a group setting, which we actually found in our clinical trials outperformed individual craft. I think there's something really magical about the group setting, getting to hear other people's perspectives, and getting to learn from them as well. And then we also do offer individual coaching alongside the course as well. And we believe so much that having that digital touch point to learn the skills, because a lot of them are really new, is really important, and actually makes our live sessions that much more effective. If people are showing up already kind of knowing the concepts, we can dive into applying it to their lives, and really get great value out of the live certified coach interactions.
And when you're talking live certified coach, you're typically using
Zoom. Yeah, we always use Zoom. We're 100% online, so we cross all state borders, we cross country borders. But yeah.
And then what are some stories that you, just anecdotal or composite stories of people who have gone through the program? What has been results?
One story that comes to mind was a woman who joined us, and at the time she was living with her husband, but they hadn't been talking,
Mm-hmm.
and they were really sort of on their way out in terms of the relationship. And she was really there to like feel better for herself. And by the end of the program, they were talking. Fast forward a few months as well, like we heard that they were planning to have a kid together. So I think like to be able to go from zero communication with somebody that you're like ready to walk out the door because it's just so feeling so broken is something that means a lot to all of us working on this. And then there are some, so that was like a big change in 12 weeks. We've also seen big changes that have taken longer. So sometimes people go through the course and then they want to just continue with some individual work and some really, really, really challenging positions. I think sometimes, parents with adult children are in a really tricky spot. Like maybe their child doesn't live at home, they don't have a lot of control, they interact, but it's harder for them to help make a shift. And seeing some of those longer term cases sort of be able to get a loved one into treatment and to stay in treatment after 20 years of use or something like that, also really meaningful. One more, typically I think it's more normal that we see folks coming in whose loved ones have been in different kinds of treatment. Maybe they're not in now, but like, it's a really long journey. And I've worked with one client who managed to get her partner to become willing to enter rehab. And I think, or as far as I know, like he has been sober since. And again, a relationship where she was dreaming about the apartment that she was going to, buy down the street or move into, rent down the street. And to be able to have him go and get care and maintain sobriety, very, very unique in my experience that someone could come out and not sort of experience those relapses. And she would have the skills if he did, but, a really magical story for someone sort of dreaming of a different life and for no lack of love for this person.
Right. And you gave him dreams back and hope back in 12
Yeah.
weeks. Talk about, you mentioned earlier the 5-year horizon in traditional treatment. What are you seeing different with your program?
Well, no, I think it's a 5-year horizon to like true stability. And
Mm.
I don't like to make a blanket statement, and I know I just did, but like I think that through my own personal experience and seeing other folks go through it, I think that there's a lot of healing that's required. And of course, it also depends how severe the use was and all those sorts of factors. But I think that what we aim to do is arm people with skills for those 5 years. Like, let's get our loved ones to that 5-year horizon where we, you know, not necessarily that they're relapsing every year, but like that their cognitive functions are improving every year, that they're more able to integrate into society and like hold roles in society and responsibilities in society. And I think that takes years. We can make a big difference in 12 weeks and get them on the right path, but I think that they'll use those skills for years to come.
I hear you, because my experience has been that and in talking with other people, year 3 and 4 can be really difficult because a lot of the brain function has come back, a lot of the awareness has come back, and then there's a little confusion on, why am I staying sober? Is it really better than what I was doing before? Also, the emotional awareness, the numbness, and
Mm,
the ability to handle things by, whatever it was, substance use, overeating, overwork, whatever is going on. They're like, oh, that used to be really easy to do that. And
yeah,
it's harder to experience the emotions. Plus, if they've had my experience has been, if they've had a trauma background, they're now probably stable enough to begin to deal with that. And that can be very, very life changing and shifting, especially for the
mhm,
partner who's like, wait a minute, I didn't know all this was here. And probably the person who was using might not have known the depth of it
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
So it would seem like a good time to come back and work
Yeah.
with you again.
Yeah. Well, and I think also their expectations, right? Like I noticed in myself and I see it in our clients all the time, like we have expectations for our loved ones. And just because they're in recovery or in early recovery doesn't mean they're going to meet them or like be able to take on those responsibilities. And I think that's hard for us. And it's also hard for them to see, like, hey, I'm X years old and like my sort of people the same age are like in different spots as well, and like that can be really hard to wrestle with as they get more capacity to take on more.
Absolutely. Well, and I want to throw in, if you have a teenager, this is a good course. Whether there's substance use happening or not, that teenagers trying to figure out who they are, and these positive skills, the road mapping, the looking at, we talk about it with toddlers not a lot, but we rarely talk about it with teenagers of, where are you going to pitch your tent? What battle are
Mhm.
you going to deal with when some of these just will blow by on their own? So
Mhm.
I think you should either rename you could use the same course, but rename a section of it just for parents working with teenagers. Cause that's when we started, was when ours was 13. And I'm like, these are really valuable skills just for dealing with somebody who is, I mean, he was age appropriate dealing with what he was dealing with, but the world was changing around him. And his choices were not always the best choices.
We've we've heard from people that they're like, we want this just as a parents course, like
Yes.
not related to substance use. And I think, I mean, it's changed the way I interact with people. Like craft teaches you how to get more of what you want out of people, like more of the behaviors you like. Like if I like my husband cleaning up the kitchen, like I'm going to tell him that he did a great job and he loved, it's funny also sometimes teaching this kind of skill to adults and partners because they're like, oh, you want me to like praise him for things? Praise him for things like he's being a total idiot or, but it makes such an impact. People love it. I mean, I love it. I love being told that I did a great job. Like it's something that, I think moms sort of and parents like often do when people are younger, but we still need it as we grow.
Oh yeah. And I think the piece for me is what you were saying earlier about the expectations. So my son grew rather rapidly. He is man size, and he looks like a man. And I have to remember sometimes he's 15. Uh, the expectations
Mhm.
that I would have for somebody who is man size are not the expectations for the 15-year-old. So gauging that and pulling back and saying, okay, no, I have the skills. I need to use the skills and impart the skills. And that's
Mhm.
not sitting down going, you need to blah, blah, blah. It's actually like you were saying, oh, great job with the kitchen. I really appreciate that. You brought the car when he turned 16, you brought the car home with half a tank of gas. That's
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
of those things in this program, like you said, there's every reason to sign up for it just as a human being in the world.
Mm, mm. And I will say, I like that you bring out how you're using it. I'm like, we don't get it right all the time ourselves. Like as much as I'm certified in craft, like I do trainings. Even in my own life, if I'm stressed, if I haven't been sleeping, like if that thing is just done, for the fifth time or whatever, I'll say the wrong thing. But again, craft is like a behavioral approach, and we're not trying to say you have to be perfect or do it right every single time, but having the awareness and being able to look at it and be like, oh, that situation didn't go that well.
Mhm.
Like next time I'm going to try something else. And I think that's one thing I love about the method is we can fail in it, but we can try again. And I think that's really conducive to recovery as well and takes a lot of the pressure off. And I feel like I'm just grateful for that idea in my life, in general. Like it's hard to do things when you have to be perfect all the time. And I think, yeah, it's a nice way to look at the world.
And I don't know about you, I always find that I behave better when I'm leading a group because I'm going through the exercises at the same time. And I know you've
Mm,
led many, many groups. These are, you can integrate these skills, but a challenge will come up to where you're like, oh, handled that really poorly. Need to go back and apologize. and it teaches you how to do that.
Yeah.
And so
And that's the key.
that is the key of these are life skills that either we didn't get taught, or as you said, we're overwhelmed, we're stressed out, we're not taking care of ourselves. That's my new phrase. I'll share that with you. Self-care over chaos.
Yeah.
It's,
And
if I
it's, I
need
think,
to stop.
and that's one of the hardest things for a lot of people, actually. And I struggle getting that message across to people sometimes, because I also understand where that comes from. Like, if I'm so concerned about my loved one, you know, why would I focus on me? Like, I'm fine, but we're not. And some of the people that we work with, yeah, they've been loving someone through addiction for 10, 20 years. And it's just like, how much does that weigh on you? And it's so, so important. I don't know. It's hard for some people to accept that. And I think, I mean, it was hard for me to accept that. I remember I once was on the phone with a therapist trying to get my husband to speak with this therapist. And she said, "I think you need help." And I was like so offended in that moment, like, me, I'm trying to help here. And I mean, it was true, but it's hard to hear that sometimes, because I was like, I'll be fine if he's fine, but we can't wait that long.
No, and we give away our power to the other person, whereas we can be fine whether
Yeah.
they're using or not. And that
Yeah.
was probably the hardest, painful moments in my life was when the therapist who was working with our child said, it's not safe in your home for him to
Mm.
process the deep work. One of you needs to show up.
Mm.
And that's such a big call to action that I couldn't ignore it. And I knew that I was the one to make a shift. But I will guarantee all of our listeners out there,
Mhm.
Jane's program and working this program, if you truly work on yourself, your family will shift. I can
Yeah.
guarantee that because I've experienced it firsthand, that
Yeah.
nobody else finished the therapy but me. The whole family shifted. I have a relationship with both of my sons, with my husband, all those things, because I chose to take care of me. And
Yeah.
it's just to convince somebody to do that is almost like pulling teeth. Like you said, you were offended.
Yeah. Yeah. I was pissed. But it's a great point, because I think, one of the metrics we really measure ourselves by in our clinical trials is that the participant, the family member, the concerned significant other that's going through it, that they feel better. If they feel better, we get like 95% feel more confident in how they interact with their loved one. 95, it's like, if they feel better, then it's a huge weight off. And it totally, like you said, changes all of the interactions in the family, because they're an integral piece. Doesn't mean that they're responsible at all, but they can have power to change things and influence things.
Well, and it doesn't mean that I walked away from having boundaries, having clear identity, knowing who I was. That's not what these programs are about. I didn't
Mhm.
just give over. I learned how to manage me, which allowed my sons to copy that, which allowed my
Mhm.
husband some freedom to manage himself.
Yeah.
So that shifted everything. And it's through your program. I did use some therapy with it, some other work, but I cannot recommend enough. If the best you can do is get on digital and do
Mm.
it alone just to get an idea of what it's about, you will come in craving more. You will sign up for
Yeah.
coaching. You will look for more, because who wants to be like you and I were, 2 a.m. in the morning going, what do? I don't even know what to say.
And our challenge is to find those people, because we know they're searching, and it'll take time, but yeah, that's what we're committed to doing.
It's a beautiful thing you do. And I really appreciate it, especially when I teach
Mm.
the classes. We do need to talk a little bit about safety. So what in the class, I know you have a whole unit on that. What would you tell somebody as they're beginning to look into these answers and look at these?
Also, two types of safety that we do have, like, dedicated resources for, are any sort of interpersonal violence in the home, because when we change the way that we interact, we can expect that things will change in the home. And sometimes they may get a little bit more heated before they cool down. Someone might be surprised at how we're starting to behave. And that's something that we really are careful with and we work with all of our clients on. We would always say, that's why we have worksheets, like do a lot of the thinking through of things before we put them into place. But yeah, if there is a risk of interpersonal violence, we definitely would be recommending like your regular sort of hotline numbers so that they're on hand. And then we would want to work with that person individually in a session or two to sort of go through some of the protocols that we have related to that. But yeah, otherwise, in every sort of protocol, we'll go through and we'll say like, what are the obstacles to this? What could go wrong if we don't feel it's safe? We would pick a different option. So that's really clear. And then in terms of, overdose, which has been plaguing the US the previous years, and is part of the reason that we have these National Institute on Drug Abuse funded clinical trials and are able to offer free support for folks that qualify. And there is eligibility criteria, but the main one is that they are loving someone with an opioid use problem, because that's where the funding line has come from NIDA. But we want to make sure that, one, there's a phone number, there's a website called Never Use Alone. We're giving that to people. So if your loved one is using opioids, or if they may be using a contaminated substance that has fentanyl in it or the likes, then we want to pass on that resource. It really is safest if their loved one is not using alone. So there's a phone number, or if they can set up other sort of situations so they're not using alone. We're teaching how to use Narcan to reverse an overdose should they see one, to understand the signs of overdose. Excuse signs, I don't know if you can hear those, and how to get your hands on Narcan so you have it in the home. And yeah, I think those are the two sort of key safety pieces that we're focused on. And then, like I said, with every protocol, just really thinking through what the implications of implementing a change in your behavior, and making sure that we are planning for the safety of or not implementing if it's not safe.
So the key is there is help out there. There's free help out there. There are hotlines out there. And although you and I are talking about connection, if it is physically, emotionally dangerous, we do suggest that you find some help for that. You're not benefiting your loved one by staying in a relationship where you are being physically or emotionally abused. That needs to be shifted. So this class can help you with those conversations. And if you're separated, it can certainly help with those conversations. Like you said, if it's an adult child or, a spouse or something like that. But safety is still key here, even though I really believe this is an issue of connection. This is an issue of childhood trauma, those types of things, and it can be solved with that. Safety is still utmost importance in handling your life.
And we also sometimes recommend for people that, like we mentioned, it doesn't have to be the whole family that goes through this. It can just be one person motivated, but sometimes it might not be the person that's reaching out. Like if they're not in a safe position, like maybe someone else in the family or a friend could learn these skills. And maybe we really want to think about who has influence in the relationship and where it's safe for influence. Like typically also, a younger, I don't get like children coming through the course, like the idea is it's like you're an adult and you're in sort of an even level of sort of power in the relationship. And that's what we're sort of looking for when we think about the influence dynamics.
Absolutely. Well, what we're going to do, and we really want you to subscribe, because we're going to have more things like this. Hopefully Jane will come back and join us again as she brings on more options in there as well. She is fabulous to talk to and will answer your questions if you want to join this program or just want to use it on your own. They've got so many options coming up for this. And you're not, I guess that's my biggest thing. You're not alone.
Yeah.
You're never alone. There's opportunity out there.
We have, I learned an amazing stat, and I'm not surprised, but almost 1 in 2 or almost 50% of American families are impacted by addiction. And there's a lot of us out there, and I definitely was one that, didn't know that we could talk about it, didn't know that other people struggled with it. And the second I started to talk about it, I realized that we're so not alone. There are so many of us going through this. And yeah, 1 in 2, almost 50%. Like, it's a lot.
Well, and if you have young kids, maybe you don't have anybody in your family, but if you have young kids, this will give you a way to talk about it. We just did an episode on suicide prevention. And one of the things that that person was talking about was normalizing the conversation that this can happen. People can feel lost, they can feel disconnected. And how do you normalize that conversation? So if your child or another family member needs to bring that to you, it's not like, poof, we're talking about it now. And it's the same thing with this disconnection, numbing out, substance abuse, all of those types of things are regular things that happen in our world, and we can't just close our eyes. So this may even be a course. I wish I'd had it when my guys were young. Just having the table conversation of, hey, what are you hearing? What's happening on the playground? What's going on? All those things. We try and do it around sex, but we don't think about it with drug addiction, right? So
Just
this
say
is
no,
also, yeah.
which
Just
has
say no,
not
it
worked.
didn't work. I mean, let's be real honest. I grew up in that era and it didn't work. It just wasn't. Say no to what and why and what's really happening. We didn't give them real information
Yeah.
on
And
why it was
now, and
happening.
now, and now with more things legalized, like, there are really good arguments for regulation and legalization of substances, and that is the path forward, but we lack a lot of education around them. And
Sure.
we see more and more parents coming through our program now concerned about marijuana use, and that being a real problem as well.
Well, and I mean, look at the opioid crisis. Doctors were unfortunately told some misinformation. We're handing it out. And yeah, we didn't have all we needed around that. And now we've got a crisis on our hands about it. And like you said, there are street things that are even more dangerous. But let's talk through where we can find you, what to look for, and to get on this study. What do they need to click on your website to do that?
Yeah. So we have a very, very simple website at the moment. There's more in construction, but basically there are 3 buttons on our website right now, so it's really simple. The
I
first
love it.
one is the first one is our program, which you just got to look inside. So that's our core offering. Anyone can sign up for it. There are 3 tiers. So the self-guided version, just the online course, the online course with the group coaching, or online course with the individual coaching. And on there, you can take a look at our coaches and more information about what you'll see in there. The next button is our free community. Our community is an online sort of question and answer focused community. So it's sort of in the spirit of, I went through this, here's what I did, this might help, here's something I'm going through, what can I do? Sort of sourcing ideas and pulling the information and the sort of knowledge base from our community. That is free. It's open 24/7. I highly recommend joining it. We're also starting a really cool series in there on, collecting all the tips that we've got in the community on certain topics, or some of the biggest topics. And then the last button on the website at the moment is our family support study. So this is backed by the National Institute on Drug Abuse. It's totally free if you're eligible to participate. We'll offer 12 weeks of free support in 2 different conditions. And you can learn more about that when you go through. We'll click through that button to that website. You answer 5 minutes, answer a few questions to find out if you're eligible. Like I said, the main sort of criteria is, it is sort of focused around opioid use problems. So that is a core thing. And other sort of eligibility criteria, like, that you have a digital device to join the program on, and those sort of things. And yeah, we're able to take over 200 concerned folks that are based in the US. So it's a really large number of people. We'll be recruiting for quite some time. We're just about to start our first cohort in that. Once we get 20 people, we'll start the cohort. And so yeah, great opportunity for free support there. And the last thing is, like, watch the space, which will be our next button that will come in the new year, but we'll be offering craft training to professionals. And that is fully sort of featuring Dr. Robert Myers, who created the craft approach. And that'll be an exciting opportunity. And we'll also have a paid and also a clinical trial sort of study option in the new year that will provide that for free as well.
Awesome. So You've got opportunities for families and family members. You've got a free community site, free community part of that will go through the tips. And then you have this study that it sounds like it wouldn't take much to qualify if you are a concerned loved one to participate in that. And that will also, like you said, the community can be really magical, that you know that you're not alone and you go, oh, happening to me too. I understand that I'm human with everybody else. And then the facilitator piece as well. That'll happen
coming soon. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time today. I really appreciate that you've taken these very marketable, very valuable skills, turned them not towards doing cheese or cupcakes or whatever, and turn them towards helping this community that is so desperate, that really is desperate for help.
Well, I'm always glad to speak with someone like yourself who's such a proponent of this work. And I think you're just like me in that you recognize that this is important, supportive work, and that we wish it was more accessible. And I will note also that even in our paid services, like, we always work to keep our prices as affordable as possible. Like, it starts at $59 a month and $129 for the group option, and that's 4 group meetings a month. It's really important to us to maintain high fidelity and quality, but also make it as accessible and easy and affordable, so that, my goal is that those 50% of people that love someone struggling with addiction, they have an option like this and they can get the skills they need easily, affordably. And I think that we can drive tremendous change. I think that we change the lives of, like, our participants and their families, and that ultimately we can change the way that America and the world looks at addiction, because craft doesn't see it as something so scary and sort of unapproachable. We see it as a normal human process, kind of like you talked about, that we can understand and we can change.
Absolutely. And I can't reiterate enough to our audience, your interface, your shortness, the worksheets, all the practical implementation. I mean, this is a $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 course if you bought it, to set up a blog or do a podcast or whatever. That's the level of quality that she's put into this, and the work that she's put into it. It probably would cost more, actually, if I think about it. I didn't mean to insult you, but
No,
that
I mean,
quality of work. And what you're offering is for people who can't afford therapy or are not going to walk through that door, so much more effective for them to be there around this specific issue. So I am always enamored when I talk to you that you've taken this on as a cause, and I just see it growing and growing and growing. So thank you for being here today.
thank you. We couldn't do it without the likes of yourself. Like, this is a really underspoken, under talked about issue. And the more we can speak about it, and the more we can teach other people to speak about it, the more we're going to be able to get out there and make sure people have really good options. So I really value your time, and thank you for talking with me.
Awesome. Be sure and subscribe. We're going to have all her links below. There's probably some videos popping up over here. So check those out, because we've done other videos around this issue, and we don't want you to be alone like we were when we were trying to solve these problems. So thank you again, Jade.
Thank you, Tanya.
Hi, Sober on Purpose family. Please be sure and subscribe. We have a ton more videos. We have courses coming up. We have a newsletter that comes out weekly. Plus, there is a podcast as well. And for those who are brave enough to really decide they want to move into the future, they want to move into their future self and leave behind the hurts, habits, and hangups that they have struggled with over the last year, I work with extraordinary women who are ready to step in, open their hearts, and find the true self that they can share with their family, their community, and the world. Because it's only when one person changes that the whole world changes. Are you ready to jump into that kind of adventure? Click the links in the show notes and let me know. Let's talk and see if we're the right fit. Again, remember to subscribe. Videos, courses, podcasts.